Mark might be on remotely, but okay. But I agree with you. I have stuff this afternoon as well. So, okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here at the August 8th, 2023 City of Cheyenne City Council Public Services meeting. If you happen to have a device, a phone on you or anything like that, if you would please either mute that or just turn it off while you're in the meeting. We would appreciate that just out of courtesy. And for those online, if you would be able to mute yourselves when you're not speaking, again, just out of courtesy for everybody. If you do plan on coming up today, most of you are frequent flyers. We recognize most people in this room. So if you do plan on coming up and speaking with us today about one of the issues on the agenda, just a reminder, please make sure you come up and identify yourself, turn on the microphone, and we can assist you with that. We have enough staff standing here that we can help you. But identify yourselves in case we need to follow up with you prior to next meeting or whatever the case may be. And with that, just a quick reminder, I always make this reminder, but public comment in the committee meetings is limited to items that are on the agenda. If you have today's agenda, if you have public comment related to something that is not on today's agenda, that won't be entertained during the committee. Rather, that is always welcome at full city council meetings, which is next Monday. So is the next one. So anyway, that's just a quick reminder with that. Madam Clerk. Oh, and for the record, I do believe we have everybody here today. We have these two nice gentlemen here, and I believe Dr. Rennie is online. So with that, Madam Clerk, item 7.
Number 7, ordinance third reading, amending the official zoning map of the city of Cheyenne, changing the zoning classification from HI heavy industrial, AG agricultural, and county A-2 to LI light industrial for land located west of Burlington Trail and south of and adjacent to HR Ranch Road.
Mr. White, do you have a staff report for us today?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Connor White, Planning and Development Department. The zoning map amendment before you has been discussed here in committee. It is an area that is looked at for redevelopment for a data center over next to the Jail Ranch subdivision and off of Jail Ranch Road. The future land use map amendment was approved by the governing body at the last meeting. And with that approval, staff would definitely support the zoning map amendment for this, as with the future land use map amendment changing, it does allow for this zone change to be supported. It was approved by the governing body at the second reading, and staff does recommend approval still of the zoning map amendment. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. White. We appreciate that staff report. Any questions for staff before I go to public developers report? Seeing and hearing none, thank you. Do we have a developers report on this item? Mr. Emmons.
Chairman, committee members, Brad Emmons, AVI agent for Cheyenne Leads. This is as Connor pointed out, a project for a company that Cheyenne Leads is working with to develop a data center on the site, and be happy to answer any questions. No changes from the last meeting, and everything seems to be moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Emmons? Seeing and hearing none, thank you. Do we have any raised hands online for public comment, Madam Clerk? Do we have any public comment? Again, we are on item number 7. Do we have any public comment from within the room? Seeing and hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rennie.
Yes, we have a motion and a second. So we are, it was moved by Mr. Seagrave, seconded by Mr. Laybourne. Dr. Rennie, I'm assuming you have comment on this item. Go ahead.
No, Mr. Chairman, there's obviously a little lag between when you guys say something and I jump on. I was going to move to approve. So I have no comment other than I think we should support it and vote for it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And for clarification, it was moved by Mr. Seagrave and seconded by Mr. Laybourne. Any further questions or comments from the committee? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The recommendation for next Monday's city council meeting will be for approval of this ordinance on third reading. Item 9, please.
Number 9, ordinance second reading, creating section 2.08.060, city employees and immediate family members, conflict of interest policy of chapter 2.08, city officers and employees generally of Title II, administration and personnel of the municipal code of the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming, requiring the promulgation of a conflict of interest policy for employees of the city of Cheyenne as specified and making a conforming amendment to section 2.52.010 regulations and benefits.
Do we have a staff report on this specific item? I wasn't going to ask you specifically, Madam Attorney, but I assumed you would probably be the best person to speak to it if you would like to.
Stephanie Boster, Cheyenne City Attorney. I didn't draft this. My Deputy City Attorney, John Brody, drafted it. But the intention here is to follow state statute and enact a conflict of interest provision in city code. And I'm available for comment or questions.
Thank you. Stand by. Appreciate that. Any questions from the committee for Attorney Boster? Seeing and hearing none, thank you. Before I go to here within the room, do we have any raised hands online? Do we have any public comment related to this item?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Lloyd. I'm an employee of the city of Cheyenne. This ordinance obviously would affect me directly. Reading through it, it doesn't look like it does much in terms of codifying things. It kind of just says these are the elements that should be addressed, except for one item where it says that the gift amount should not exceed $50. I'm just making sure that I read that correctly and that it's intentional that the gift amount is the only thing that's really truly codified. Everything else seems to just say reference the employee handbook, as it were, just saying we have a policy, reference the employee handbook for specifics. So we're not codifying those elements. I'm just making sure I read that correctly, and I'm going to make sure that we intentionally are codifying the gift amount. I don't necessarily have a problem with any of the ordinance generally. I just want to make sure that I understand what's going on correctly and that it's intentional what the direction given is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. I think you bring up valid questions. I'm not sure if that's something that the attorney would like to respond to today. I do know, Mr. Lloyd, obviously we are on second reading. So, I mean, we do still have some time to flesh some of that out. But I believe you heard those comments, and I'm sure that can be kept in mind.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'm unaware of the $50 codification. I see it in the proposed draft. I will follow up with that before council on Monday.
Yeah, you have you'll have some time if you're okay with that, Mr. Lloyd, just to do some further research. Is he trying to talk to us? Thank you. And I certainly was not trying to put your office on the spot, Attorney Boster. I wanted to make sure that those concerns were noted. Okay. Further public comment related to this item. Again, we are on second reading. Seeing and hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion. We're moved. It was moved by Mr. Seagrave, seconded by Mr. Laybourne. Do we have any further questions, comments, concerns from the committee related to this ordinance on second reading? Seeing and hearing none, the chair would entertain a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The recommendation for this ordinance on second reading will be for approval at next Monday's city council meeting. Item number 10. Madam
Number
Clerk.
10, ordinance second reading, creating a new section 15.50.070, neglected structure of chapter 15.50, historic design guideline of title 15, buildings and construction of the municipal code of the city of Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Mr. Bloom, do we have a staff report on this one?
Chair, members of the committee, Charles Bloom, Planning and Development Director. First of all, we had asked Historic Preservation Board members to be here for this presentation, and I do not believe any are here or are online. If you are online, please raise your hand so we can make sure so you can give a more detailed presentation. But essentially what this is this is a project by the Historic Preservation Board. They've been working on a demolition by neglect ordinance over the course of the last couple of years. As part of this, it essentially establishes a process for an individual or the Historic Preservation Board, member of council, anyone else, to make a claim that a property is being neglected to the point where it is approaching demolition of some sort or something that will lead it towards demolition. Through this process, we have worked with the building official, the previous building official, Mr. Bruce Trembath, and also the current one. And we've evaluated how this relates to the International Property Maintenance Code. The present 2021 version is what is presently adopted. But what this does is it does a couple of things. Number one, it allows for the board to receive a claim on a specific form that would be drafted, by the city saying, hey, this we believe is to be something that's undergoing demolition by neglect. Then the Historic Preservation Board would then have a review committee that would essentially substantiate whether or not a claim exists. And if a claim does seem to be relevant, it does seem to be pertinent and exist, it would begin a process of enforcement. That process basically would require a property owner to bring this property into conformance to stop the potential decay of that structure. Within this ordinance, there are ways that a property owner could make a claim for an economic hardship. There are specific criteria in this ordinance that basically say if it's an economic hardship, that it would not have to be repaired. One of the key things with this ordinance is it only applies to structures that are contributing within a historic district. So it would not apply to a home that is not deemed as contributing. What is a contributing structure? A contributing structure within a district is one that exemplifies some type of architectural significance, whether it's building style, building period, historic events that contributes to the overall character of the historic district. For example, a lot of folks are very familiar with the craftsman type of building style. You have Victorian building styles. Those can be contributing, provided that they are maintaining some of their original materials and they haven't had additions that might render it non-contributing. I can use an example that we have in the community of a building that is believed to be contributing, but is not contributing due to additions. The Ames Pump House is one that everyone's familiar with. The additions on the back, the addition of the metal and stuff, that is something that in an earlier architectural survey lended to it not being contributing. The city is presented in this code a variety of different remedies for enforcement. These enforcement actions would essentially go through the district court and they would be orders for compliance where property owner would be ordered to make those repairs. Regarding this, the specifics of this ordinance and how the ordinance is fulfilling the visions of the Historic Preservation Board, I would ask that we ensure that Historic Preservation Board representative be here at the next meeting to make that full presentation. We do have a meeting of the Historic Preservation Board this evening, and we will again alert them of the times of the meeting so they could be present. But with that, I'm open for any questions you may have regarding this ordinance. And if there are any specific detailed questions, I would like to follow up with an email to the committee and to members of the council so we can make sure we're getting you all accurate information regarding the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Yes, I would be dependent on you. If you would encourage those folks to be here. I'm also surprised, frankly, that they're not here. I know they've been very very involved in drafting this and working on it in the past, year and a half, 2 years that this has been worked on. And also we would also be dependent on you, if you would help us relay any specific questions to them between now and Monday. We would appreciate your follow-up with that. So thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bloom from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rennie.
I'll go ahead with you, Dr. Rennie, first, and then I believe Mr. Laybourne probably second. Go ahead, Dr. Rennie.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have several questions, and I guess my first question for Director Bloom is, and I apologize if I missed some of the discussion. My picture froze up on me for about 30 seconds in there, so I didn't hear all of his presentation. But first of all, with my questions, would it be better, is Mr. Bloom comfortable with these, or would it be better that we postpone this until somebody from HP board is here? Because honestly, I think someone representing them should have been here. So does Mr. Bloom have an opinion?
He's conferring with one of the sponsors, and I believe he's going to respond to that right now.
Chair, members of committee, Councilman Rennie, we do not have a concern with a postponement. If there are any specific questions that you would like to relay, we could relay those to the Historic Preservation Board this evening. And then we would be able to have them more prepared for any specific answers you were seeking.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can ask my questions, but honestly, I think I'm going to move to postpone until one of the representatives shows up. One of the questions I have is under I3E, and it says that the landowner is permitted to have representation by council. If they have council there, do we need to have does the city need to have council present if there's a hearing? Has that been considered, and would that be necessary?
Chair, members of the committee, yes, we would have to be represented as well, and that representative would be from our city attorney's office.
All right, I didn't know how difficult it would be to coordinate that, and if that would affect the timing of any kind of hearing. Under the economic hardship we've had other buildings that have been torn down due to economic hardship. I presume the intent is the board is to enter into this early enough to where it is economically feasible to save a building. And that's just, they can address that when they come. Under plan to relieve economic hardship, under 4A Romanet 2, talks about acquisition by purpose. Is that acquisition by a different owner or acquisition by the city?
I see Mr. Bloom's wheels turning. I think he might have an answer for that. Just stand by, Dr. Rennie.
And Chair, members of the committee, I will
ahead.
further research that question. I want to make sure I get the full context of that.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I think I'll save my questions until there's a member of the HP board there.
Okay.
One other question, which may be a typo, but if you go under K, paragraph 2, it makes paragraph 2A, it makes a reference to subsection M.1.A. And I am not finding a section M. So I need whoever drew this up to look at that and find out what that reference is actually for.
Chair, members of the committee, yes, we can double check those cross references and make sure it's pointing in the right direction.
Mr. Chairman, like I said, I have several more questions, but I think someone from the board should be there to answer them. So I will yield to my colleagues.
Okay, yes, I'm gonna move to Mr. Laybourne next, and then you gentlemen can decide how you want to handle this today after that. Mr. Laybourne, I believe you might have some questions or comments, if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bloom, one of the key questions here in my mind is what applicability there is in this process to that small house basically across the street from the historic governor's mansion that I believe has been placed in the adjustment of the historic district. I couldn't quite get the details of how that happened, the expanded special historic district of that particular area. I did attend the Historic Preservation Board meeting where the property owner came and there was a lot of discussion about what happened. Am I correct that that property is now condemned?
Chair, the members of the committee, on the property that is being discussed is one that's located across from the governor's mansion. That one is not necessarily a demolition by neglect case. That was a demolition with it was a failure to obtain a certificate of appropriateness, essentially permission for exterior modifications to a structure in a small area of the community surrounding the governor's mansion. It's a requirement under city ordinance that any exterior changes or modifications to any buildings within that area go through the preservation board to make sure they're within context of the area. This property has had a variety of work that has been undertaken outside of building permits. And since the work was done outside of building permits and without appropriate oversight of an engineer or an architect, there were damages that were caused from stormwater runoff into the site, notably a collapse of a section of the foundation. The building official has been on site. They have, I don't know if they've officially condemned it. I know it has been declared unsafe. And I know that they have issued a stop work order and that owner is moving forward to try to rectify the issues that were created there with an architectural engineer. I don't want to say it's been officially condemned. I don't know if the condemnation notice has been posted. But I do know it is on the top of the radar of building and the planning and development department. And I will follow up with Tono, the building official, to see where we are in that process and if it is moving forward in that process, and we will send you all an email directly.
Mr. Chairman, there's a lot more to it than that, Mr. Bloom, and particularly when you mention the certificate of appropriateness and the determination of that board as to what may or may not be remodeled or constructed on that site. And I think that's not the only case in that particular district, but I have real deep concerns about this process. I guess I will address them under our comments, but I want to note that that particular property really tells us a lot about this process and how it might work, because the determination of all the considerations that are involved in this multi-page ordinance really are quite complex and commit the city to things that I guess I'd best address in comments from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laybourne. Mr. Seagrave, I assumed you would have some comments as well. Go ahead, sir.
I'm not going to say much today, sir. I just have one quick question for Mr. Bloom. Under paragraph 4A, Romanet 1, talks about loans or grants from the city. Is that from your budget, sir? Where's that money coming from?
Chair, members of the committee, Councilmember Seagrave, there is nothing budgeted for that right now. In order to implement that element of this program, we would have to have a budget item added and a budget either with an annual budget or through a budget amendment process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee for Mr. Bloom? Okay, do we have any raised hands online for public comment by chance? Madam Clerk? Thank you. Public comment, Mr. White.
Michael White, through you, Mr. Chairman, I have a number of questions. I agree with Dr. Rennie. Seems like we have a lot of questions that we can't answer. Economic development, I would contest that if this is such a hot item, why haven't we enforced it before with the International Property Maintenance Code? That addresses all structures. Number two, if we're going to have a historical board review this, I think it would be a good idea that the city would have input with some members from the council. Besides them having input on this, especially when some of the comments by Mr. Laybourne are very right on. My reflection on this is that the state should have some input on this under the old building code, which was the dangerous building program, which was started by Delmar Stone in the building department. That's why I'm a little confused about that. Mr. Tono should be here to address those concerns. So in regards to all of that, not trying to offend anybody, I think this ought to be postponed, but I think it might even be postponed past 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment.
Yes, sir. Richard Johnson, 612 McGovern. The reason that we brought it forward in the way that the agenda is set up is that we knew that this was going to be on second reading through public service. So I confer with Charles that it is, if you guys choose to postpone it, that's fine with me. But what we were hoping to do is get a kind of feedback from this meeting. So if Dr. Rennie would ask the remainder of his questions, because what we were going to do tonight is go to historic preservation, take all of your questions that you had from committee today, present them to the board, get an answer. If we have to set up a work session, say in like 2 weeks, where the board meets independently to discuss the work session for more solid answers. Because if a postponement would allow us that time, but I would appreciate it if you could ask all of your questions so that we can take those, because if a work session doesn't work out, then it would already be past third reading by the time of the next historic preservation board meeting, which would be the second week in September. And so I'd appreciate if all of your answers to kind of follow up in regards to this. As Charles alluded to, it we did go through the 2 building departments. The 3 members of the historic preservation board did do the original document. I had Kathy from the Historic Preservation Board present this to the Board of Realtors over 2.5 months ago to get their feedback. There was no feedback from that. I've asked for this to be answered over the last 2 months to make sure everybody was comfortable before we brought it before all of you. But once again, I would ask for all of your comments today so that we can present that to them tonight and schedule a work session with Historic Preservation if needed.
Mr. Johnson, how about I do this? I go ahead and finish public comment as we typically would. And then if I get a motion in a second, that would allow for further comment. And then these gentlemen can make that choice if they'd like to ask their questions. Is that fair?
That will be fair. And then I will ask Jennifer if she can supply us the minutes, from what took place here today, so we can have those, including Mr. White's comments, to take before Preservation Board tonight. And then, of course, you're all welcome to attend and ask directly if you would choose to.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Is there further public comment from within the room related to this item? And I'll ask one more time, just in case we've had some new folks join potentially. Okay. Seeing and hearing no more public comment, the chair would entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve for discussion.
Chairman, I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
Okay, moved by Dr. Rennie, seconded by Mr. Laybourne. I know everybody alluded to having some more questions or concerns. Now is the time. I'll go ahead and because I can't see your light, Dr. Rennie, we'll go with Mr. Laybourne first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that it's reasonable for me to give you some background about my experiences with this. I live in the Lakeview Historic District in a contributing structure. I own one of the oldest buildings in Cheyenne downtown and have been involved in these issues for many, many years, particularly in regard to the hospital, its expansion, and the historic governor's mansion protective district. So this is something that the issue of historic architectural preservation is very important to me. And it's something that I campaigned on and deal with in terms of my neighbors on a regular basis. It's something I believe in very much, but I do have to say that this ordinance is not realistic. And I base that on the fact that it will be administered by a appointed board. And then you get into items, the duty to maintain, that might be interpreted different ways. The certificate of appropriateness, the duty to repair, and then as you proceed into the question of the economic hardship, if you read through this, and it's pretty extensive, you get into a process that I believe is fundamentally unmanageable. And I don't believe that any property owner should have to come to these situations with probably an architect, a contractor, and a lawyer to work through this. And certainly, I don't believe that the city of Cheyenne has either the funding or the desire or the ability to enter into this sort of process that is spelled out in this ordinance. It really is beyond what is, in my mind, reasonable. And I do believe that I can tell you that the historic district that I live in has really progressed in terms of individuals who prefer to live in a historic district, care about their property, and want to see it maintained and contribute to the ambiance of the neighborhood. So I don't believe we need to postpone this. I believe we need to look to recognize that this is a really impossibly complex and unmanageable process that's spelled out here. I applaud the board for their efforts. I think that they're good people, and I think they care very much about our community and how its heritage is preserved. But they're really not the people that should be making these decisions. And these interpretations, I mean, it's all written out here. But I think, as we all know, those situations are all unique. And I can think of several situations in some of the historic districts that concern me very much, whether or not those repairs or those improvements would be looked at and determined by the Historic Preservation Board rather than the property owner. I just don't believe this is correct. I think that our current ordinance that does bring that demolition certificate before that board has worked and is appropriate. This next step here is really too big of a step. And it is something that I think I hope, I'm sorry there isn't more discussion here. I know it's been discussed and worked on for quite a while by the board and city staff. But I'm more interested in what the public thinks about this and what the property owners in these historic districts, and there's several that have different conditions, are looking at. And I can think of specific cases that I just don't believe that this ordinance could possibly straighten out. There are many differences in how people deal with their property or abandon their property or fight with their neighbors about their property. There's just too many questions here, and this is really too much. So I'm definitely opposed to it, even though I believe very strongly in historic preservation, appreciate the board and their efforts. But this isn't the way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments, concerns from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I'll yield to Mr. Seagrave if he has more questions. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and go enumerate my questions as Councilman Johnson has requested.
And I believe Mr. Seagrave is gonna do the same. So yeah, that's fine. We'll get the questions on the record. Go ahead, Mr.
All
Seagrave.
right.
Mr. Chair, I agree with the majority of what Councilman Laybourne just said. I'm also very concerned about an unfunded mandate. When I first read this, I had several thoughts. First, I thought I was in New York or Chicago or someplace. The way government is reportedly works there. And then I came down to the economic hardship, and I'm just like, out of all the things the city's dealing with right now, and there are very many that require funding, and we work very hard at that. This just doesn't rise to the top for me. This just isn't one of those issues that is in my top 20. I cannot see this governing body, at least my view of it at this point, setting aside unknown amounts of money to address these issues. So at this point, I am not supportive of this action, and whether we postpone it or not, that probably won't affect my decision long term. Thank you.
Dr. Rennie, I'll go ahead and go to you. I believe you have like to get on the record at Mr. Johnson's request so he can speak to the board tonight. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Chairman, to follow up I think my colleague from Ward 2 and I are kind of on the same line under Section 4 under A, again with Romanet 1, Romanet 2. If the city is to acquire the property by purchase or to provide loans or grants to remediate it, again, there is no funding. So I want to know, what was the board's intent there? Are they going to fundraise so they have the funds, or are they expecting that to come out of the general fund? That was one issue. I asked a question about council already. Under enforcement and expenditures for repair work, this is something I looked at years ago. I mean, essentially, Section enforcement alternatives 2 and then 4 enforcement and repair work and establishment of lien all indicate that the city will go in and abate the property or remediate the property and then attach a lien to the property. And obviously intent is whenever the property was sold, that we would recover those monies years down the road. The problem is, I mean, I looked at that in the past when I was a DDA board member, and I talked to several communities around the region about how they handled abandoned buildings or buildings in disrepair. And they all had ordinances that allowed them to address those situations, but in no case did they have the funding. And a good example is, I agree, if we had an ordinance like this, maybe we would still have the Cary building, which was a contributing building and in its day, a beautiful building downtown. However, by the time the city was going to, if this ordinance were in effect, again, it's a similar situation. It comes back to funding. If the city were to go in and remediate that, at one point, the estimate was several $100,000 to remediate it, $300,000 just to level it. And I think it came out to be way more than that. With the asbestos, it was more closer to $800,000. Again, the city the city did not have a fund to do that. And that was the issue with other cities around the region that I talked to, is that, yeah, we already have laws on the books, as Mr. White said we do, but we don't have the funds to do it. And are we willing to tie up tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars attached to a lien that we may not recover for years? And that's been the issue always. So philosophically, how does the HP board want to address that? And then I guess my question for council is, if we have this ordinance in effect and we have a building that is cited, then are we compelled to remediate it? And as the fact that it's in violation of the city ordinance, and if we're compelled to remediate it, which that means we have to come up with the funding for it. Lastly, on the last page, under 5A, it says that each day during which the person commits or allows remain unabated shall constitute a separate offense. I'm presuming that's referring to, then it's a violation of a city ordinance and it's a misdemeanor, and then the typical fines come in of up to 6 months or $750. So I'd like that part addressed also. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman. Again, I think there's some merit to something like this. We could have saved several of our buildings, so I don't necessarily want to see it die, so I would move to postpone for 2 weeks.
Dr. Rennie,
Oh, sorry, I just lost volume. I saw your lips moving, but couldn't hear anything.
was that a formal motion to?
Yes, yes, it was. I think everybody's discussed it, made their points at this point, so I'd like to postpone for 2 weeks.
We're having no more. I'm going to ask if there's a second. I'm not seeing a motion for a second, so I believe your motion
It does, thank you.
on the original motion. We've had public comment already, and we've taken council questions and comments. I believe you have some information, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Bloom, everybody to go to the meeting tonight. So hopefully those folks will be available on Monday night. With that, we have a motion and a second. We are back on the original ordinance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Dr. Rooney voted yes. No, there is no recommendation on the ordinance.
Number 16, resolution expressing the support of the governing body to request the state of Wyoming to reconsider the decriminalization of cannabis and reform to the Wyoming Controlled Substance Act.
Probably. Okay. Sorry about that. You read it in. We are on item 16, I believe. Do we have a staff or a sponsor, I guess, a sponsor's report on this?
Yes, just for the time brevity, since I have to go back to work here soon. We have already discussed this prior to when I attempted to remove the courts from the system. After listening to all the comments that were made by council at that point, there was more support to have this done at a statewide issue. And so I asked my state representative, Daniel Singh, to attend with me today. So we can know that, yes, this is a proposition that, I understand at WHAM in June that it only failed by 1 vote in regards to be a WHAM initiated resolution, but there are other channels to go through. In regards to this, I have spoken to about 5 or 6 other legislators in regards to this, but Daniel was kind enough to come here with me, but he will speak under other comment. But I have any questions in regards to the specifics of the resolution.
Stand by, Mr. Johnson. Are there any questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Johnson, who is the sponsor? Mark have his hand raised.
I'm going to show for the record right now that Dr. Rennie has left the meeting, so I don't have him any longer in the meeting at 12:44.
Okay. He might come back on. He might be having some technical issues. Okay, seeing and hearing no questions for Mr. Johnson, I'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. Do we have any raised hands online
Oh,
before I go?
There he is. He's back. He's back. No raised hands.
Is he back? Hey, Dr. Rennie, I'm not sure if you can hear us. You dropped off for a little bit. Did you have any questions or comments based on Richard's staff report? Okay. No raised hands. Mr. Singh, go ahead, and if you'd like to start off public comment, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I recall,
Can you please identify yourself? for the
my name is
record,
Daniel
please?
Singh. I represent House District 61.
Thank you. That's just for the record.
Yes. This issue is clearly important to the members of this community, and it has been for a very long time. However, due to party politics in the legislature specifically, it has not been addressed. It has not been addressed at all. And for a nonpartisan body to come forward with a legitimate issue of the people when, because of how the legislature is set up, these people do not feel comfortable, or frankly, even if they did come forward with their honest opinions, they would not be listened to because of the realities of party power. If there is a nonpartisan body that is able to step up and legitimize the need requests, the genuine needs and requests of the people, that gives an opportunity for the people who were elected in the legislature to properly do the people's business. And so if this truly is an important issue to our community, having the backing of the community would be invaluable in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Any questions for Mr. Singh before we move to the comment? Thank you. Any further public comment from here in the room on item number 16? Seeing and hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Rennie,
I think we at least let this out of committee and let the entire council vote for it. So I will move to adopt.
okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Seagrave,
I have no intention of voting for this, but I will second it just to let the whole body talk about it. Thank you.
okay. Moved by Dr. Rennie, seconded by Mr. Seagrave. Appreciate that. Thank you. Are there any further questions, comments from the committee related to this resolution? Seeing and hearing none from the committee, all those in favor? Did we have all those in favor?
I'm not clear, Mr. Seagrave, what your position is here. Could you clarify that for me?
Yes, sir.
I see.
Discuss.
He seconded it, at least in my understanding, to at least let us have an opportunity to have a vote, so there will at least be no recommendation on Monday and it could be discussed in front of full council.
I mean, you are not a yes vote, correct? Well, this is a interesting problem that certainly.
Well, I did call for a vote, but if you would like to have further comment, I'll allow it, Mr. Laybourne, go ahead.
I don't see any overwhelming reason here. I think that this is, we discussed it. We considered it, and certainly the legislature has that opportunity to do as they see fit. I don't understand the argument of the nonpartisan body, and I don't believe that I think we basically dealt with this a few months ago or weeks ago. And certainly it is an important issue. I don't believe it's a municipal issue, and that's why I'm a no.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, simply to have discussion apparently. All those in favor? Those opposed?
No.
Okay, there will be no recommendation for this resolution at next Monday's city council meeting. Item number 17, please.
Number 17, resolution declaring that the city of Cheyenne has agreed that covenants restricting application of water-wise landscaping or requiring installation of water-intense landscaping mandate irresponsible use of the water resources and requesting the state legislative committees and the state legislature to review, consider, and adopt modifications to state statutes to nullify covenants that restrict water-wise landscaping or require installation of water-intense landscaping.
Mr. Bloom, if you'd like to present the staff report, please.
Chair, members of the committee, Charles Bloom, Planning and Development Director. This title of the resolution almost summed it up completely. This is a resolution with the intent to request that WCCA, that's the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, and WAM, Wyoming Association of Municipalities, pass similar resolutions, and that we ask the legislature to consider a legislative amendment that would essentially make any covenant that restricts xeric landscaping, so waterways landscaping, or requires water intense landscaping, basically nullify that. The state of Colorado has enacted legislation that accomplishes that. That legislation is also echoed in a lot of other states, a lot of the Colorado River states, Arizona, and Nevada. One of the subdivisions that we are aware of in the community that actually has these covenants is the Crestridge subdivision. We happen to notice that while researching covenants related to an annexation and rezoning in the area, we looked at that and said, hey, this neighborhood has covenants that restrict waterwise landscaping. So a resident in that neighborhood technically is not allowed by covenant to install xeric species. Luckily, those are not enforced by the HOA, but they could be, and they are on the books. And we have a lot of different covenants in different neighborhoods, and that has been not enforced over time. We have such as the racial covenants, that those have been negated and made basically irrelevant via state statute. So this is just another step in trying to preserve our resources that we have here, and to make sure that property owners could not go after one another because they're trying to install water-wise landscaping. I'm open for any questions that you may have. I do know that Sarah Bergson is here with the Board of Public Utilities, and she may have some other information to add.
Are there any questions from or for Mr. Bloom from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Laybourne.
Did we get a copy of that covenant at Crestridge that you're referring to?
Chair, members, we can definitely send that to the committee.
Well, I'd like to read it, obviously, and I wasn't aware that that was the case. Did you find any others, or did you do a search of covenant? I don't know how you'd even search covenants of that nature, but I'd like to you're getting into some botanical questions here, I think. It's easy to say is escaping, but when we start talking about specifics of landscape, could likely confuse me, and I think probably others. So I'll look forward to getting that language, and I'd be interested in, I assume it was adopted when the subdivision was created.
Chair, members of the committee, that is correct. It was adopted, it was created and recorded by the developer at the time of subdivision.
So our only option here in terms of doing away with that covenant is legislative from the state. Can we get rid of that covenant ourselves?
Chair, members of the committee, that's a great question. Covenants are beyond local control. They require an amendment by the property owners. Most of the time you need a majority of the property owners, so just over 50%. In some cases, covenants may actually set that bar higher. So the quick answer is no, we as the city cannot preempt that. It would have to be something that from the state of action. Now, create an ordinance that would prohibit new covenants that are created to incorporate any of those provisions. Something that a lot of communities have enacted just as a small piece of sustainability. A statement or ordinance that basically prohibits any covenant that may limit or not allow the installation of clotheslines, for example. I've seen that in a lot of different codes because clotheslines where one can dry their clothes is a sustainable option. But a lot of times neighbors and communities don't like to see clotheslines in neighborhoods because of, you're airing someone's laundry. So anyway, there have been covenants that are ordinances and communities that have been put into place that prohibit the prohibition via covenants of clotheslines. So long story short, for new ones, we could establish it locally. For existing ones, that would have to be something that would either come from the property owners or it would have to come from the legislature through nullifying those statutes or nullifying those provisions by state statute.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Laborn, if you
So-
have an additional question.
I'm recalling the effort that was made and basically came from Cheyenne citizens about racial covenant restrictions. And so, and I believe the legislature acted on that and it made it illegal to have such restrictions in your document. So how would, and you probably maybe don't have the answer, but I'm very curious. How does the state sort through all of those covenants and determine whether or not they're valid? Wouldn't that be dependent on a complaint from an individual in that neighborhood or subdivision? So enforcement of this would be dependent on those conditions and probably I certainly wasn't aware that that those racial covenants were in existence, but didn't they remove them from the deed? Was that how that worked?
Chair, members of the committee, Councilman Laybourne, not necessarily. The state did not go through any of the covenants afterwards, essentially establish a process that if a resident, just one resident within the area covered by those covenants brings that complaint forward to the clerk's office, they can ask for that covenant to not be recognized and that's recorded against all of the properties. I thought Seth was going to clarify because he is he had to leave for another commitment, but Mr. Lloyd does live in a neighborhood where it does have the racial covenant. And one of the property owners brought that forward. There's a process that was identified. And once one property owner brings it forward in that neighborhood, then it applies to the entirety of the covenants. So essentially, it's policing by the landowners to identify the problem. And in the event that someone is sued or, brought up as, being accused of installing a xeric landscaping or required to put in high intensity water use, they would bring that forward and that covenant would be removed.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Bloom?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Seagrave.
through you, are there other communities that are actively pursuing this or is it just Cheyenne?
And Chair, members of the committee, I believe at this time it's just Cheyenne.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Bloom? Okay. Public comment, do we have any raised hands online, Madam Clerk? Mr. White, start us off, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Michael White. I have a problem with why the city wants to get involved with covenants at all. I've attended a number of legislative meetings and then specifically commissioners meetings in this county. And every time a landowner brings up that comment, the commissioners and the county attorneys say that's a civil matter. So I don't even know why we're even having this discussion about this resolution. I think this resolution ought to be voted down and tabled. If somebody wants to lobby, like Mr. Bloom said about Mr. Lloyd, maybe he needs to go to the state legislature on his own time and comment on that. But when you get into covenants and HOAs, the city should have no involvement in that at all. Thank you.
Come on up. Further public comment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is Sarah Bargson with the Board of Public Utilities, Water Conservation Specialist. I've been before you all, City Council work session this summer and last to talk about our water supply and our concerns about water shortage in the future, including Colorado River curtailment. Water conservation is first and foremost a culture shift, and it takes decades to make any movement. And I think this is an important step to take and in this resolution to remove impediments or perceived impediments to our citizens taking steps to prepare for that future. So I'm willing to entertain any questions or discussion.
Any questions from the committee for BOPU staff? Thank you. Further public comment.
Chairman, committee members, this is not the topic I was anticipating speaking about, but I do live in a covenant controlled.
Could we get?
Oh,
your
I'm
name?
sorry. I'm Robin Sims.
Thank you.
I do live in a covenant controlled neighborhood that does have covenants specific to xeriscaping. I also am the president of an HOA in Colorado, and so am very familiar with the laws that have been enacted there. What I do urge you, I support the need for water conservation, but the language in this resolution that says we're requesting state legislature to approve something that nullifies any requirements would be pretty far reaching, in my opinion. In Colorado, that language has been nullified, but also HOAs are allowed to, and covenants are allowed to set parameters to limit the amount of xeriscaping. And so, for instance, in our neighborhood, we had one property owner who scraped off all of the dirt in their front yard and put down gravel. That in our neighborhood is not aesthetically pleasing. There are ways to use low water use and xeriscape that do still meet the neighborhood's need to preserve the value of the property. And so the language of just asking the state legislature to nullify everything without any other options, to me is overreaching.
Thank you. Further public comment related to this resolution? One more call for raised hands. Okay, seeing and hearing no more public comment, the chair would entertain a motion. Is there a second?
For the record, Dr. Rennie did drop off again at 1:02. It's 1:05 now. He's trying to get back on. He lost power to his iPad, so he is not currently in the meeting. Oh, he's back. Hold on. Sorry.
Okay.
Do you want to just let him know that we have a motion?
Yes, okay, so Dr. Rennie, we are on the WaterWise resolution number 17. We have a motion from Mr. Laybourne, and we are asking for a second.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second the motion.
Moved by Mr. Laybourne, seconded by Dr. Rennie. Any questions, concerns from the committee related to this resolution?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Seagrave, go ahead.
several things. I agree with the issue Ms. Sims brought forward. I'm concerned we're doing this for one known homeowners group. Apparently nobody else in the state is concerned about it. If this is going to be a Cheyenne only issue for one subdivision. And recently, as you might recall, we've had testimony that BOPU has more water than they know what to do with. They had an extra 8,000 acre feet a year they didn't know what to do with and wanted to give it to an outside user. So I'm going to be a no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seagrave, for your comments. Further questions or comments related to this resolution from the committee? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
For clarification with the aye, Dr. Rennie, are you in favor or opposed? Did he drop off? So we have one in favor, one opposed, correct? I wanted to move forward, and it already will. But I have some pretty significant concerns. I'll be a no vote, but I will vote to break the tie. So with a vote of, and I don't know where Dr. Rennie stands, but there will be no recommendation at a count of one vote in favor, two opposed. The recommendation for this resolution next Monday night will be no recommendation. Item 18, please.
Number 18, resolution directing city staff to research and provide a report regarding the property currently utilized as a detention pond at Highland Village subdivision.
Do we happen to have a staff report or anything? Do we have anything from one of the sponsors or a staff member on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have something.
All right.
And that something is a petition. I believe that
You're making the staff report? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
From the neighborhood there, we have copies of it.
Okay.
And a there is in our documents, we have the original plat that shows that particular piece of property. And what has happened to it over the years is what we're attempting to determine with this resolution. It's very important that we go back through it and understand that in this subdivision that I understand, very nice subdivision, I might add, that has gone through a number of builders, a number of individuals that had some responsibility. Evidently, the city didn't follow through in a way that I think they should. But as it sits now, it's a very difficult situation for those people that live in that subdivision. The picture shows the detention facility actually draining out, not taking in and taking that water and all the debris with it. So this is nothing more than an attempt to help them understand what the history was, what the legal questions are, and so that we can make an informed decision about this. I think it's very important that not only this one, but I believe there might be others. These orphan detention sites really are a big problem to that neighborhood. And we had a lot of participation here. I got this petition at their first neighborhood night out, where they got together and talked about how they'd like to help turn that area into an asset in their neighborhood. It's not very big. So this really isn't an item that has an expense, and it isn't an item that is going to commit us to anything more than knowing and understanding this situation. I've worked with the city attorney's office on this in attempting to review what happened here, but it is something that I think is very appropriate for us to understand at this juncture. We're going to be looking at our stormwater fee here soon. We know throughout Cheyenne, there's a lot of issues here in terms of how our overall system, our neighborhood system, our floodway system needs to be maintained and operate. So this is a small piece of that, but I think it's very important to the people that live in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laybourne. Any questions from the rest of the committee for Mr. Laybourne in his capacity as the sponsor of this resolution?
Well, he did come back on for like a minute and then he went back off, so I don't have him on currently.
All right. Do we have further public comment related to item number 18? Don't all step up at once. It's already been a long meeting, folks.
Chair, members of the committee, Charles Bloom, Planning Development Director. I just want to note that this is within a planned unit development. So with this resolution, we'll go ahead and we will research that planned unit development. There are some specific provisions regarding detention and the common area and responsibilities of the community. So as we move forward with this, if this is passed, we will go ahead and prepare that information. There's a lot of details that we'll have to pull out of our historic records. With a lot of our planned unit developments that we have in the community, there usually are different unique factors that are implemented that do take a little bit of additional staff time to research, but we'll be happy to do that if this does pass.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Cobb.
Chairman Cook, through you, sir, just wanted to reiterate what Charles has said as well. From our standpoint, we'll at least, if this moves forward, we'll allocate enough staff to be able to at least research the drainage reports and pull the information available that we can from our side as well.
Thank you. Any further public comments, either within the room here or online?
I'll just note that Dr. Rennie's back in the meeting at 1:14.
Okay, we are through public comment. We're on item number 18. The chair would entertain a motion. Moved by Mr. Laybourne, seconded by Mr. Seagrave.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Rennie,
I hope you'll all forgive me because I'm trying to do my duties as an elected official and attend the meeting, but obviously I'm struggling with my internet here at times. So I missed all of Mr. Laybourne's comments. So again, forgive me if I'm asking questions that have already been addressed. However, it seems to me if the report comes back that there is no benefit, I assume that we're asking for a report from the engineer's office and the planning office as to whether it'd be beneficial to have this be part of the city's drainage system. Is that accurate?
I'm making eye contact with both Mr. Cobb and Mr. Bloom, and I'm getting affirmative head nods from both of them.
And if there
I
is,
believe they'll be issuing us a report.
and if the report comes back and says there is no benefit to the city, then what is the, I mean, for the sponsor, does he have what happens at that point, I guess?
Mr. Laybourne, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the fact of the matter is it is under use as a detention pond and has been for years. There's just no doubt about what it is and what it does. The question is it city property? Is it properly designed? And I want to emphasize again that there is adjacent development going on across Maury there that is pretty significant. And I believe that this certainly should be considered in conjunction with that so that all of that drainage is properly exits these systems. But the point is, I think this is a real concern of the neighbors, and we've talked about it quite a bit. Occasionally, the city comes in and does something, cuts the weeds. Sometimes in the past has done some sort of engineering work on it. So there's no doubt about what it is. The question is, what can it be? And how can it be turned into a neighborhood asset? It is the only common area and open space in the subdivision. And it certainly could be improved. They're very interested in helping do that. So if the report comes back that it is no longer a drainage function as it has been for many years, that'd sure be interesting. But Dr. Rennie, I'm sorry you can't see the picture that I provided here of how that drainage issue is non-functional and spills the water out into the street instead of taking that water away from that neighborhood. So I don't believe that there's any question that what it functions in or what it should function, it's just an unusual situation that deserves some explanation. I look forward to getting that.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Rennie.
is there anybody on staff that can answer? Do we do any other than the maintenance on the retention pond up by Anderson School, which Mr. Cole developed at a significant cost to him? Do we do maintenance on any other retention ponds in our system?
I believe Mr. Sanchez is going to take a stab at that.
Jason Sanchez, Community Rec and Events. We do maintain some retention ponds that are irrigated, such as Bar X, Teton, Pando. Try to think of a few others. Those are some examples of retention areas that we maintain.
All right, so I guess actually, Mr. Chairman, my other thought is I'll be interested, if Councilman Laybourne could leave the picture on my desk, I'll make sure I see it before Monday's council meeting. You know, from his description, it does sound like people there need relief, but you know, there's a detention pond on Rodeo that has no maintenance in Ward 2. And those people have complained to me over the years how awful that looks. So I would hope that, assuming, you know, that Mr. Laybourne would support some kind of looking at that in the future also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions or comments from the for the sponsor?
Well, the sponsor has a question. Is Mr.
Well,
Cobb still here?
Mr. Cobb, if you would like to entertain an additional question.
Well, Mr. Cobb, I don't have the title of that particular action that we took earlier this year in regard to the adoption and understanding that we have a complete municipal system that doesn't have orphans. Do you remember the title of that action that we took?
Mr. Cook, through you, sir, are you referring to our MS4 adoption? Is
Yes,
that
I
correct?
am.
Yeah. Yes, under the guidelines, sir, that is our responsibility, and the whole is part of the system that, yes, we do sign that with the state.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second, correct?
Yeah, and
Mr.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Councilman Seagrave, I just want to remind you, we do have a substitute.
That's
Thank
up
you,
that's up to the members of the committee to bring that
That's what I
forward.
was trying to bring up. Mr. Chair, I moved to substitute dated August 1st, 2023.
Substitute brought forward by Mr. Seagrave, seconded by Councilman Laybourne. Do we have any questions, comments from the public, or excuse me, from the committee related to the proposed substitute? Maybe we can get an explanation as to what the substitute does for our benefit as well as the benefit of the public.
Chair, members of the committee, Charles Bloom, Planning Development Director. The purpose of the substitute is essentially just to just provide some additional clarification on the whereases. Some of the whereases that were initially drafted were not guaranteed to be accurate. This was to make sure that we are covering our bases, that all of the whereases were accurate whereases and reflective of the background information.
Okay. Thank you. Questions or comments for Mr. Bloom related to his related to the proposed substitute? Okay. Dependent on that explanation, are there any questions, comments, public comment from the room or online regarding the proposed substitute? Go ahead, Mr. Cobb, if you'd like.
Mr. Cook, can I have a little latitude here? I just wanted to back up a little bit with the MS4 and kind of explain a little bit what that actually means to us as a city.
I typically wouldn't, but I believe it's relevant to the conversation.
And I
today, so please
apologize,
do.
sir, because I just wasn't prepared for the question. But as I began to think about this, one of the things that needs to be clear to this committee and as the governing body as a whole, yes, while we do sign that MS4, we do delegate those responsibilities and have actionable items that we can force people who are supposed to maintain their own facilities to do so. That is a warning first, a $750 fine second, and a $10,000 fine third. So again, there are different levels of this. And again, as Mr. Sanchez alluded to, he was referring to things that these are irrigated particular detention facilities. There are irrigated and non-irrigated. So again, the responsibility of those are based on the ownerships of those properties and how each one of them are individually taken. So I hope that clears some, from my mind, I hope I cleared that up to the committee.
I believe so. Anyway, I think we all appreciate that explanation. All right, do we have further public comment related to the substitute? Seeing and hearing none and no raised hands. Again, so we are on the substitute, gentlemen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, the substitute passes. We're back on the original motion. Any further questions or comments on the original resolution? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, the recommendation for next Monday's city council meeting will be for this resolution to be adopted as amended. Last, please.
Number 19H, memorandum of understanding between the city of Cheyenne and Cheyenne Rotary Club Foundation regarding donation of Rotary Park to the city of Cheyenne.
Attorney Boster, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Stephanie Foster, City Attorney, and I believe the Mayor Collins is intending to do the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, do we have you with us?
I hope so, sir.
We hear you loud and clear, sir. We were told you were going to give the staff report, so if you'd like to do that, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. This is Mayor Collins for the record, and I just wanted to get the discussion started by maybe just a little bit of background. It's been a while now, but the Rotary Club Foundation has been looking for a meaningful project to do within this community. And what they've settled on is an opportunity that I think was going to be fantastic. It's a purchase of a little over 12 acres of land just immediately west of the mall on Delrange Boulevard. And as you drive by, you've seen that little piece of land. There might be some livestock on there, and it's just south of Mylar Park. And the vision is to create an area that we can do a couple different things. Mr. Cobb talks a little bit about water storage and water quality, and we can change the way the stream flows there to really create a water quality feature. And then there'll be a few acres that will be available for some quality of life stuff like park amenities, things that the Rotary Club is really excited to do. And so basically what the Rotary Club has offered to do is buy 12 acres of land on Delrange Boulevard, which I have no idea how expensive that is, but it's a hell of a gift for the city. Give it to the city. We'll do a master plan for both the water quality issues and for the park issues. And then collaboratively, we'll work together to create the park for this community. And so I'm very excited about the generosity of the Rotary and what they're trying to do for this community, and would encourage our support of this gift and this park plan. And I think Ms. Sims is there, and Stephanie Boster is there if there's any specific questions, but I definitely wanted to say publicly thank you. I think this is an amazing gift for our community.
Thank you for that staff report, Mayor. We appreciate your time being here today. Any questions from the committee for either Mayor Collins or, like he said, Mrs. Sims or Attorney Boster related to this MOU?
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rennie.
Okay, Dr. Rennie. Go ahead.
I just want to confirm or hear it from the Rotary Club representatives. I know the mayor has kind of articulated what the vision of the city is in that area. I know it would be for some stream improvements to help with water purification. And there's been some discussion about moving the greenway down closer to the creek and away from Delrange Boulevard. But generally, I think it's going to be more of a natural area, not a really active play area. So I just want to make sure that seeing that how the MOU has 2 members of the Rotary Club on the committee for representatives on the committee for the master plan, I just wanted to hear in advance that they were pretty much in agreement with the vision the mayor just articulated.
Chairman, committee members, I'm Robin Sims representing Rotary Club of Cheyenne today. We have been working on this vision with city staff, the mayor, a number of our Rotary Club members, and here's what we say. You might wonder why we would do this Rotary Park. 100 years ago, Rotary Club of Cheyenne stepped forward as a leader in the development of Cheyenne's public park system. Among other things, we agreed to prepare the plan for the city for a unified 1,000-acre public park system around the lakes. And today, we're really proud to be able to have the opportunity to acquire and donate the land. Of course, having Rotary Park increases the awareness of Rotary in our community, but that is not why we are doing this primarily. We wanted to pick this location with this generous donation that we've received as the ideal location to preserve green space and to build a community asset. And so what we see is a lot of what you see in the proposed MOU. The goal is to develop it as a green space, but also to include public gathering and recreation spaces, educational and conservation components, natural habitat. We do anticipate that it's going to be low maintenance, low water use, low need for mowing. It's not the manicured big park area with soccer fields and sprinkler systems and that kind of thing. So we do see that as our vision, but we do see some components of that do have gathering spaces, not necessarily big playgrounds, but picnic areas and those kinds of things that allow people to get into the natural spaces around there. And so we've been working very closely with Jason Sanchez and Tom Cobb to develop a vision for that.
Dr. Rennie, did you have any further questions for Ms. Sims before I maybe turn it over to Mr. Cobb? It looks like he wants to make some comments as well.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate her answer.
Mr. Cobb, if you would like to provide some information, we'll go ahead and. Hey, we all like pictures. And yours are usually pretty cool.
We try to. Chairman Cook, through you to members of the Public Services Committee, I've given you a handout first, and then on the screen picture is more of a concept plan. And I wanted to, if you go to the next page, please. Sorry, Jennifer. So,
it's been an interesting meeting today. So, I think we're okay. Don't worry about it. We'll do the best we can.
Keep, if you could please slide down a few more slides, please. Right there, please. That one. Thank you. So on the screen that you can see now, that was the concept plan that we started with. And I wanted to make sure that we identified first during our Dry Creek Master Plan update that this area was identified as a resource to be able to increase storage in Dry Creek and also create a water quality feature. And then when we found out about the Rotary and their kind donation for this, these two ideas melted together very quickly because we've identified this as one of our 12th top project out of 25 in the master plan to be able to move forward. And again, it provides benefit from the Dry Creek perspective because for both storage and water quality. So it's a win-win from our side from what I feel from the drainage component. And again, what the assets of what the Rotary wants to move forward with the park and that. Just so you see both, I've given you the one that I've handed out to you is the more technical side of this. So that's the one that actually provides the water quality. And again, the concept plan above is more what we talked about from a bigger picture. It is, like I said, identified as the 12th most important project for Dry Creek. which puts it pretty high out of the 25 that they've selected. I can also tell you that that included channel improvements, greenway, park improvements, and what we would consider the soft surface nature trail for educational purposes, and it's shown on the concept plan. What we've identified so far for a budget cost, just for council's consideration, right now, without further design, we're looking at about a $3.8 million project, which includes all the components I've just talked about. So with that, I'll take any questions you have of me.
Questions from the council for Mr. Cobb,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Seagrave.
through you, the water retention on the first page, that's part of Mylar Park, is that correct? That's not this, as I understand it,
Mr. Cook,
Go ahead.
through you, to Councilman Seagrave, it's both components, sir. So the first stage, obviously, the largest storage is in the Mylar Park component. There is some storage that they've identified in the creek just by the widening of the channel and some of them meandering.
but the proposed park is page 2, right?
Correct, sir.
Thank you.
Further questions from the committee for Mr. Cobb? Okay, I believe, Madam Clerk, just to clarify, we are still on public comment, correct? Thank you. Any further public comment from here within the room?
Mr. Chair, Jason Sanchez, Community Rec and Events. Just wanted to add from the park side, besides the safety and the Dry Creek improvements, we would work with the Kiwanis Club to create a master plan. I'm sorry.
You know what?
Rotary. I should have just kept seated.
I can't move fast enough
I
to
know.
protect you.
I'm sorry about that. Rotary, to create a plan for this space that would be a water wise landscape, something low maintenance as Robin described. And so we'll work with them and hopefully turn out a quality product.
We needed that, Mr. Sanchez. Thank you. It's been a heavy meeting. We needed that, even though it was at your own expense. Thank you. All right. Any further public comment, Scott, if you'd like to?
How about now?
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Scott Meyer. I am a member of the Cheyenne Rotary Club and a past board member of the Cheyenne Rotary Foundation. I just want to make a couple little quick comments. First of all, let me introduce some of the other members of the Cheyenne Rotary Foundation Board. I have Cindy Pomeroy over here. I have Lucy Osborne over here, and I have Brent Lathrop, who is the chairman of that board. The other thing I just want to make a comment regarding, and it's just one of those things from the lawyer standpoint. We've heard a lot of talk about the Rotary and Rotary Club, that really this is a gift from the Rotary Club Foundation. And I just want to make sure that we're certainly trying to support the Rotary Club of Cheyenne and all the Rotary clubs, but it is the Cheyenne Rotary Foundation.
Thank you. Stand by just in case. I'm not sure if there have been any questions or comments or not, but
sure.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Meyer?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just one brief one. The only date that I see in here as far as performance is termination if it's not done by September 1st of 2027. Are there any other dates or time markers that we should look towards?
I don't believe so, but I'm going to let Ms. Sims help here.
Robin Sims, I do believe there's one additional date that we added as of yesterday, and that is that the city agrees that we will do have an RFP ready for the master plan by the end of June of 2024.
But as far as purchase and transfer, there's no dates at this point.
There are no dates in there. The Rotary Foundation, the Cheyenne Rotary Club Foundation does have a contract to purchase this property. It is contingent on the approval of an MOU by the city. And as soon as that's done, then we will take the steps to purchase that property. And then the additional steps to get that through the donation and contract phase with the city to get that in city hands as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
I think the only thing that else that would probably be going through there, just so that you understand, that we'll be working with the city attorney with and have you, there is a contemplated maybe a reversion clause of somehow that if the property would revert back to Rotary, if at some point in time, and that's where the date needs to be in there, if the city decides not to move forward with this, even though we got the memorandum of understanding, but if pick a date, 10 years from now, whatever,
Yeah.
we don't build a park.
Okay. Further questions or concerns from the committee, either for Ms. Sims or Mr. Meyer?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I see here that the memorandum of understanding between the city of Cheyenne and Cheyenne Rotary Club Foundation regarding donation of Rotary Park to the city of Cheyenne. Where are we at in the naming process of, we have quite a process here when we name, when we accept names of things like this. Where are we at with that?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Representative or Councilman Laborn. That isn't being currently discussed with the county commissioners because right now it's my understanding that that is still part of the county that you guys will be annexing. We'll be discussing that with the county commissioners to get that name on there that we want for the Rotary Park. And also thank you very much for Scott Meyer because he's such a great guy. But I do think that at that point in time that the county commissioners will address the naming of that so that when it gets transferred to the city, it'll have that name on there.
So when it's so your impression would be then, Mr. Meyer, that when it's annexed, it would probably already be named Rotary Park through your process with the committee. Is that?
Mr. Chairman, members of the county, yeah, that is correct.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Meyer? Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay, seeing and hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion. So moved by Mr. Seagrave, seconded by Mr. Laborn. Mr. Seagrave. The substitute moved by Mr. Seagrave and seconded by Mr. Laborn. Do we require an explanation, Madam Attorney, as to the substance of the substitute?
Mr. Chairman, through you, Stephanie Voster, Cheyenne City Attorney. City staff met with the Rotary Park Foundation yesterday afternoon, and they had some suggested changes to the MOU. I made those changes last night, but I'll have an additional document, which essentially we're updating paragraph 5C, and that's the obligations of the city. I want to tweak that a little bit so it's very clear what the obligations of the city are in terms of this MOU. So you're going to see that after this meeting, maybe in an hour or so. So the Rotary Park Foundation and the city are on the same page with regard to the intent of the donation by Rotary Park Foundation and the obligations of the city. And I also wanted to clarify, this is step one and a long step in terms of how the property will actually be received by the city. So I anticipate in the next fall, you're going to be seeing this property coming over to the city and also additional discussion related to the importance of this property with the drainage plan.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from Attorney Boster from the committee related to the substitute? Public comment related to the proposed substitute? This is a tough crowd. You folks have been very patient. We've been sitting here a while. Okay, we are seeing and hearing no public comment. We are again on the proposed substitute. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Those opposed? The substitute passes back on the original motion. Again,
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rennie.
Okay.
As one who has historically voted no on naming parks and facilities because we had no criteria. In trying to address Councilman Laybourne's point a little bit ago, we have adopted criteria for naming, and I think this park far and away meets those criteria. So I have no problems with the name Rotary Park. And I just want to thank the Rotary Foundation. This park belongs in the city. This piece of property belongs in the city, or as part of the city park system. And I just want to thank the Rotary Foundation for their gift.
They're nodding affirmatively. Okay, any further comments from the committee related to the original motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Laybourne.
hallelujah.
All right. Well, if there is nothing else, all those in favor,
Aye.
those opposed? Okay, well, the recommendation for next Monday's night city council meeting for this MOU will be for approval as amended. And with that, this meeting's over. Thank you all.